Welcome to Weed Wednesdays, produced by International Broadcast Media, better known as IBM.TV. I'm your host, Jeff Eichen, human rights advocate and social activist fighting for government deregulation of weed and the release of all nonviolent criminals incarcerated for possession of marijuana. Moving violations, parking tickets, IRS debt, etc. Here on Weeds Day, we keep the public informed about all things weed related, including festivals and legislation surrounding regulating the growth of hemp. Today, my guests are Hello, everybody. It's me, Jeff Eichen, and I wanted to share with you today some beautiful guests that are just streaming and coming in right now. We have Vivian McPeak from HempFest, and we're going to get an update on the future of HempFest and what's happening right now. I know there's little bit of unrest in Seattle and all major cities, but that's not going to slow us down for giving you the news and letting you know that we're still working on ending prohibition for my lifers, for your lifers, and nobody should be in jail for something that is legal now. So hang on. So I am just getting a text, everybody, from one of my guests, and let me give let's see, let me find my StreamYard here. Public, StreamYard. StreamYard, there we go. So I'm going to give that to Chris Conrad. Chris Conrad is coming in, y'all. And right there, and boom, here he comes. And so I'm going to go back to sharing with you. Today's virtual gift is that the ICBC, Alex Rogers is an incredible soul. He brings everybody together. They're going to have this conference coming up with Rick Steves. He's an amazing traveler, but not right now during COVID, and a hemp activist and supporter. There's Tommy Chong and some of their DJs that they're going to have. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful online event. So get your tickets, everybody, for the ICBC. Sit in. I'm not sure if it's going to be a chat potential, but learn more about what's going on in the cannabis world, about the new breakthroughs and what we're learning. And there's a photo I made of John Sally. He's a NBA superstar. He's got 3 rings with the Lakers, and I think he's got rings from 2 teams. But I got to meet him and to with him late night on the after parties. So it's just really fun to be in our choir here. We're singing and we're getting louder every day, everybody, so we can help to end prohibition and bring our prisoners home. So I'm going to unshare my screen now, everybody. That is incredible that there's 11 hours, let's see, before tickets are purchased, the virtual symposium, and special guest Rick Steves. Tommy Chong is a special guest too. So check in with ICBC conference, and we were going to have Alex on today, but he's off and about doing some incredible networking to help this show go on, and he's global. So are we. So welcome to Weed Wednesdays today, and I will stop sharing, and I think we have a couple guests in here now, and go back to my stream. Here we are. So we have Vivian McPeak, and we're so blessed to have you upright, solid, and at the office. Thank you so much for joining us, Vivian. It's always a pleasure to have you. Even if we have you more often than not, you're a voice of recognition, of authority, and of completion. You have an incredible track record with Seattle Hempfest since I've moved to the Pacific Northwest back here and live just 2 hours from Seattle. I'm really blessed that I've had. Oh, a funny thing is, I cleaned my trailer out yesterday and I found my 4 tire boards, and they were all soggy, and I put them in the sun to dry. So my 4 little tire boards, and my heart just went wah, wah. So give us an update on and a round of applause, everybody, for Vivian McPeak for all these years of having 100,000 visitors and 4 stages and music and all that organization with Hemposium. My dream is that we can do a little bit of online HempFest this year. So tell us what you're thinking.
Well, Jeff, first of all, thank you very much for that introduction and for having me on the show again. Yeah, these are unusual times, man, and we are all being forced to adapt to the challenges of our reality these days. And we're in the 29th year of Seattle Hemp Fest, my 29th year with the event and organization. And while we remained hopeful that we could have the events safely in the parks on our 26-year venue down on the waterfront, it's become patently obvious that we can't safely produce the event this year in the parks. So the event will not be happening in our usual venue, and we are moving it on to a virtual Hemp Fest. And we're kind of putting that together right now, and we've got big plans. We've got a really cool theme, which is the Green Renaissance, to look at all of the different ways that cannabis hemp can play a crucial role as a catalyst to a more sustainable, equitable, and just post-COVID world, basically. So that's what's going on right now. We're kind of scrambling to figure things out. Our store and offices have been closed for months as we're social distancing, and we're working from home. But it's put us in a real challenge, a real bind, like thousands and thousands of other events and businesses and organizations economically. We're really in a bind, man. So we'll be looking to our community to support us as we try to transition into a virtual event this year.
Well, we're really proud that, all these years, I got to meet Jeff Mazansky came and George Monterano. These are our prisoners that were in jail for us. For 30 years, George Monterano was in jail, and Jeff Mazansky 21-9 for weed. And I think that sooner or later, somebody's going to figure out that it's a cash crop for paper, fiber, fuel, medicine, and food, and building houses, and amino acids, and just all the goodies. We're getting confused by so much clutter in our minds right now. I think they call it chatter, and the government counts on that, so we really don't do what's going on today, which is upheaval. And I think that organized manner that the Gay Society has gotten themselves, really settled in gay marriage, and with the, going to the Supreme Court and everything. I think this is an opportunity for us to really collate and not just have another event, like the event that ICBC is having online and a couple of the other online events. How will they end prohibition? Are they going to talk just to the choir? So that's my job. Is I want to get yourself and align with us to really end prohibition, not just talk about it. What do you think about that?
Well, yes, Jeff. I mean, what we're seeing right now in America, this visceral reaction to police brutality and racial injustice, and the this epidemic of street executions where mostly men, but men and women of color are being summarily executed during minor police interactions, is a symptom of a much greater and more pervasive problem that we have, that's really been rooted in a big way in the drug war for decades. and it also is symptomatic of the economic disparity that we have throughout our society, and just a whole lot of injustice from so many different directions. And one of the ways that we remedy this crisis of the soul of America is to end the drug war, and it's just so critical and so important. And of course, the drug war, hits everybody, but it hits people of color infinitely worse, exponentially worse. So it's really important to get the message out. The interesting thing about a live stream, even though it's, let's face it, you can't reproduce being on that beautiful Seattle waterfront in that 1.3 miles of parks, with stages and 400 arts and crafts, food and informational vendors, 100,000 people in one spot. You can't reproduce that online. But what you can do is get a tremendous amount of information out to a larger audience. You can only have, 100, 150,000 people come to HempFest in Seattle, but you could basically take an online event just about to everybody in the world who has access to the internet. And if you're going to bring a speaker or a band down to HempFest, they got to fly in or drive in, and they got to stay somewhere, and they have to eat, and they have to spend a day or two out of their busy schedule. But with an online event, they sit down in front of their computer screen for an hour, and they might have to get up early or late if they're in an interesting time zone, or if they're in Europe or something, then maybe they have to pre-record something. But it opens the possibility of a greater participation level from folks that normally wouldn't have been able to consider being involved. So what we have to do right now in so many ways in our society is we have to take a cargo ship full of lemons and make some lemonade, and try to figure out how can we adapt and adjust and maximize the situation we're in, to make it as productive and as positive as we can.
Well, the nature of the blessing that Kimberly Calhoun and her team have given me and Weed Wednesdays, a platform on IBM.TV, is really special also because we can talk to Portugal today. I mean, not unlike any live stream can go global, but some countries don't allow social media. I mean, it's so weird, and because they're a POD TV, that's pod TV, it's something that is done for the first time. We can sneak our this conversation to Russia and to people that need to hear it, because this is a global issue, not just what you're saying about injustice from the color of your skin. That needs to change. And so the word of the internet and shows like this, shows like you're going to have the ICBC show, they can talk to the people in Portugal and in Uruguay. Portugal's a great example of how they decriminalized all non-pharmaceutical drugs, and it's working fairly well there. And I just am wondering if the chatter of injustice and all these other things are smothering us, how we can get louder now. I don't need Oprah or Deepak to talk about us, but for gosh sakes, we have Sanjay Kupa. He's on our team.
Yeah, Sanjay Gupta is become an articulate voice. Who'd have thunk that, 10 years ago? The thing that the cannabis culture, movement, industry, community has is thousands of brilliant and articulate individuals who can speak from a variety of life experiences, man, across the board. I mean, I see that Chris Conrad is here now, and he's one of the smartest and most articulate people in the cannabis world. But there's so many folks who have the ability to speak to so many of the different aspects of how the cannabis hemp plant could literally revitalize and regenerate our environment, our economy, our medicine, agriculture, so many things. And of course, that's just one component of the drug war is cannabis. We need to we need to transform our society in so many ways. And I think that the COVID crisis, the pandemic, has kind of exposed gaping deficiencies in our global society, and shown us, so many things. I mean, it really validated Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders' platforms, man, in such a big way.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, you're right.
It's rubbing our face in these glaring inequities on the globalization and our environmental destruction, so many things. And I see we're joined by one of those brilliant voices I was just talking about in the cannabis culture, movement, industry, community, Chris Conrad. But so I'll just end that by saying that's why we're looking forward to putting together a great virtual hemp fest. I don't know if you know that yet, Chris. That's
I didn't hear that
happening. Of course.
I can't wait for virtual hemposium. I mean, it's just going to be off the hook. We
got big plans, because the theme of the Green Renaissance covers so many things, including cannabis in cannabis hemp in construction and all the from hempcrete to fiberboard to bioplastics and stuff, and cannabis in agriculture and medicine and so many aspects of the environmental ways. We need it more than ever right now, and it can play such a vital role as a catalyst to a more sustainable and just society in so many ways, so many categories. So that's kind of what we're planning.
Well, if we learn from our brothers from history, from not only from Jack Hare, like Terror, but if we go back to Bucky Fuller, he said less is more. And my father was a lightweight concrete architect, and he moved to Mexico because he couldn't get his projects completed here with all the paperwork and all the tape. And he would have loved hempcrete, my father. My father would have been really, really, really proud of that. So I think that ending prohibition will also be the voice and the green light for all this to happen. Now with COVID, that you say COVID is a special opportunity for us to go online, to do this, to do that. And how do we bring our public here and make a difference? But I'm thinking that the ability for us to share this information is so important that I think that without any cars on the street, India, I heard in India, they can see the mosque now, and they were all dying. They were choking there. And now that the slowdown of COVID has brought everybody inside, and they're all contemplating, not meditating, they're sitting down and contemplating what to do next, the air has cleaned up. So there's so many.
That may be getting short-lived, though, from what's going on right here in California. Not only are they opening things up, but in fact, people are using cars to do protests, cars to go and do celebrations where they're driving around to wave to each other. So it's kind of like we're undoing it pretty quickly right now. And so, hi, Vivian, and hi, Jeff. Chris Conrad.
Welcome, everybody, to Chris Conrad from California.
Thank you for your kind words there, Vivian. I missed what exactly you were saying about social media because I'm not a fan of social media. I think it was good for the first few years, but it was quickly over. Actually, it's kind of interesting because when you go to the internet and you see the way the internet worked, it's like the cannabis reform movement really took over the internet at the beginning. DRCnet and Drug Sense, and we were some of the first people with websites. In fact, we have some of the best websites because we got them before the names were all taken up, and things like that.
HempNet here in Seattle with Robert Lunde.
Yeah, and for me it was Jim Rosenfeld, and we have Dave Borden and Mark Greer. So but now when it came to social media, it seems like the right wing groups are the ones who got control of that pretty quickly. And like today, for example, Mickey was telling me there's something going on Facebook saying that that the Proposition 64 wasn't done properly, and so they're talking about they should be overturned, which is our legalization initiative here, of course. And they're saying because it wasn't printed into the handbook. Well, it was printed in the handbook. I mean, the thing is that you have people who go out there just putting out an out and out lie, and then people are pouring it off. Oh, there was this big mistake that they made, and there was no such mistake at all. We pulled out the voter handbook. Like, what do you know? It's right there, exactly like
Chris, when social media showed up, I thought, wow, this is so good because now everybody has a voice. And now I'm thinking, you know what? Everybody doesn't deserve a voice, man.
Yeah, right. And then you've got the situation. Was it in India where there some Hindus organized the slaughter of Muslims on Facebook and stuff like that, and things like that. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's all bad or whatever, but I
we
think
are in an extreme time for sure, gentlemen.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Zuckerberg should take responsibility for what's going on. The fact that he has, I mean, there's a difference between a fact and a lie, and the fact that they allow lies to pass as facts has hurt the discussion significantly, I believe. I mean, it's kind of like prohibition to keep marijuana illegal for a long time. Just that lies took it.
Weed Wednesdays and all of the people that are providing some of the hemp TV, so it's okay to get excited and to speak French. If you use the F-bomb, that's okay on my show, because HBO, this is late night, everybody. It stands for hemp box office. This is the hemp box HBO.
Well, it's a real honor to be here. And I would say I've been on Jeff's show a few times. It seems like you're always on a different platform, Jeff.
We're trying this new platform because it's on IBM.TV. They gifted me this platform because I'm the only Reform show on IBM.TV, and we're going global now.
But I would also say, Vivian, I consider you to be one of the great spokespeople. Your speeches at HempFest. The problem that I often have is that after you've introduced me, there's not that much left to say because you've done such a great job. But the thing about the way that you present the issue is that you use these soundbite nuggets. I think maybe from your rock and roll background that can convey a message really quickly and get it across to people. And so that I really want to give you guys a lot of kudos. And I'm very interested in your online forum this year. I mean, the Hemp Fest. So I'm looking forward to hear more about that.
The evolution, yes, we're really excited.
You've been on my short list of folks to call, Chris, but we've been dealing with stuff kind of hand over fist, one thing after another. Our store and offices are been closed for months, right? And it's been crazy. And on social media, I feel like it's a double-edged sword, because on one level, it's like a hammer. You could build a house with a hammer, or you could beat somebody in the head with it. It's a tool. And on one hand, there's a tremendous amount of information being disseminated and people networking. And, I talk to people in real time in other places that I never would have had a phone conversation with. But all in all, I think it's doing more damage than good. And I think that it is so easily manipulatable and exploitable by people, by bad actors and people with, and it's this kind of reinforcement of bias. And the tribalism and stuff has really been more negative than it has been positive.
And it's interesting that I've been using not as much as I keep telling myself I'm going to spend. Well, let me say one other thing. You talk about things happening. It's like this morning before the show, a water main broke in front of my house, and so I'm like dealing with that and then running upstairs to get online. So I know what you mean about things that are happening. But I'm writing some about the history of my own involvement with the movement, starting in 1988 when I formed the Business Alliance for Hemp and said I have 3 goals: industrial hemp, medical marijuana, and adult legal use and commercial sales of cannabis, and how that went forward. And the thing is that at that time, we were using fax machines. Nobody had cell phones that I knew for another 15 years or something like that. Practically, we were using photocopiers. Some people were even using mimeograph machines to copy information. It was all telephone. And so that using that technology, we were able to create a national network within 1 year with Bach, where I had representatives in 43 states who had started my campaign with me, joined my campaign, I should say, and created their own local groups and so forth. And at the time, that was just like astoundingly fast. But now they have these Moscow troll mills where they just, in one day, they might make 1,000 Facebook identities and start spreading false information at one time. And it's very disturbing to me that, when Obama was president, that they were aware of this. I was reading about it in Newsweek magazine and thinking, why aren't we doing something about it? And for the life of me, I can't understand why Obama did not take this thing seriously. They just thought that Hillary was going to win and it didn't really matter or something, or what?
Because he was a Muslim and he was born in Hawaii and he was born in Kenya, man. But you know what? Everybody thinks they're an expert because they've seen a YouTube video, right? Or some meme, some graphic meme.
Right.
And it is very disturbing. And I think that the onus is on us to, number one, to try to use social media, those of us willing to do that in the most constructive and productive way, which is a challenge. And I struggle every day, really. I mean, my mental health is challenged by what I see, the things I see, people that I know are good people, and I know are reasonably intelligent people that get up every day and function and pay rent and go to a job. The things they believe is so disheartening. It blows my mind.
Right. Yeah. No, in fact, I've told
people. I can't
people.
read my scroll anymore. Right now, especially, I can't read my scroll because I'm like, what? And I want to go tit for tat with everybody, and it's pointless. It's like a time sink, right?
Yeah.
It's our duty, men, to stay focused, to really get the book published, to do it, to finish it. This is my inspiration, Mr. Conrad.
And what I want to say is that I stay on social media because I'm an activist, and because it is just too effective to be able to network and connect and get the word out to, I'm always at the limit, 5,000 friends, right? To get the word out is so effective, but it is, we're in challenging times on every level. I mean, every level. I look at every aspect. And of course, as we're saying this in the background, I've got, in Seattle here, windows are boarded up all through downtown, and the police are in riot gear every night, dispatched. I mean, we are in trouble. We're in trouble. Our economy is already in shambles from the COVID thing, and now more city and state budgets are being depleted by all the deployment, and businesses are being more compromised that we're getting ready to open. I mean, and of course, it's in the background of this. We know all about the racial disparity and the heavy-handed police tactics and stuff because we've been working on the drug war for decades and decades. But in the background, we have this racial inequity, which is just unbelievable. And its time has come, and it's important to have these conversations we're having are critical. But man, we're facing a lot of problems, And
somebody was saying the other day about what's going on now. Somebody from Black Lives Matter I heard on TV, and they were saying that there's all these white people who are right now very upset about this, and they're saying, so where have you been for the past decades? And for you and me, the answer is we were out there talking about this issue. We were talking about how the drug war is an extension of Jim Crow, an extension of slavery, and an extension of the civil rights movement. And what's ironic to me is that, no more drug war, is that when I was becoming active in the early 1990s, we felt that the civil rights issue and the social justice issue was one of the stronger points. Hemp, we thought, was the most strong point, medical marijuana, then social justice as the leverage to get to
and it got no traction. That's not what got traction, right? We would talk about the injustice and the inequities of all the people in jails and prisons, and it was hard to get traction. You start talking about the economic aspects of cannabis, right? And it could raise all this tax revenue and create jobs. And that's very interesting. I want to hear more about that. It was actually very demoralizing for a long time.
Yeah. But with the other side, there's, I won't say demoralized, but it made me have to approach it differently, is that we initially in the early 90s went, being the Family Council on Drug Awareness and Bach, we went to a lot of African-American church groups that talked to them about this. We got very hostile reception. On the one hand, because they said, you're a white guy, you don't know
right.
Which is true. I'm not dying.
We've been profiled.
The other thing they would say to me is that you don't know what it's like. We're in these cities. We have all this crime. So we want this strong law enforcement. We want these guys locked up and put away. And, when Clinton was president, the African-American religious churches were calling for these harsh sentences. When Biden was supporting it, it was with African-American church support. And it took
three strikes.
They were stigmatized by the crack epidemic and the gangs and stuff. And they felt very stigmatized by that and threatened in their own communities, right?
Right.
By the crime and the violence that was going on.
Chris, did you meet the lady that wrote the new Jim Crow?
Yes, I've met her. I forgot her name at the moment, but I've
Michelle Alexander.
Yeah.
Incredible. I want to get with Spike Lee and do the movie. It'll reach millions. Movies reach millions. But I'm saying not as a Hollywood movie, but to help this syndrome.
The syndrome that period that you're talking about, Chris, is when the apparatus was built, the law enforcement apparatus, the militarization of police and all that kind of started, and the victimization of especially men of color really was kind of, that was like another extension of it, where it was really heightened, right, and exacerbated. And that's what we're dealing with right now, is kind of the vestiges of that is still going on when we see these men and sometimes women being executed in the streets.
I'm actually, I was looking around me because somewhere in here I have this book from the 1970s. It was written by a police officer, at least allegedly written by a police officer, where what it basically is, it's saying that the environmental movement, they call them watermelons, green on the outside but red on the inside. They're using all this red on the inside. They're talking about people who are fighting for civil rights are really communists. People who are fighting for environment are really communists. People who are fighting for economic justice are really communists, et cetera, et cetera. And he built this whole thing up, and he was encouraging people who were against the environment, who were against racial equality and so forth, to become police officers. They said, this is the way we're going to turn the tide, is that we're going to take over the police departments around the country. And I believe they were relatively successful at that. Now, the thing is that you have to go before that too. In fact, I read a book about the Black Dahlia, famous murder case. They say it's unsolved, but actually this book that I read, it basically says it was solved, but basically the police department was so corrupt that they let the guy go, because he was connected to organized crime, and there was a big payoff system and so forth and so on. One of the doctors who actually identified the probable murder in this case, in order to shut him up, it turned out that he was prescribing medical marijuana for his wife, and so the police arrested him for marijuana because he had solved the Black Dahlia case. And so but then the other thing they said there was that there was a anti-corruption element that was a critical part of Los Angeles law enforcement in the 1930s and 40s, just partially because there was so much corruption, right? The mob was running a lot of the police departments. So they had built an anti-corruption unit, and that became a very focus of this time period when the Black Dahlia had passed away and so forth. Then, because they were so close to, because the Black Dahlia case was actually leading them straight to the heart of the mob there, that what they did was they buried that case, and they said they decided to reform the police department by focusing on crimes in low-income areas, in other words, the inner cities. And so in order to protect the mob, they made this big shift in the 1940s and 50s to make law enforcement be essentially a white supremacist organization in California. And then that shows up in the 60s, where we have all the riots and so forth. And then they try to clean it up again. And now we find out that it was, meantime, in the 70s, it was replaced apparently by this new system that came in with supposedly anti-communist approach and took over law enforcement. That's why it's so important. And I don't want to just be pounding on police, because I know a lot of cops were nice people, and I would not want that job and so forth. But LEAP, law enforcement, it used to be against prohibition, and somebody else going to have to remind me what it stands for now.
They did change it, yeah, and I forgot what they changed it to. But
I just say I wish I heard them speaking out right now, because they have been talking about social justice and racism.
And they were on the other side, and now they're speaking in their pro legalization. And so these were cops that were arresting us, and now they've seen the light, and they also have it in their house. They're using it for medicine, for their elders, for their joints, for their. And
as Vivian knows, they're very well spoken. They're knowledgeable, and they can speak from firsthand experience. I've observed.
We had the former Seattle police chief, Norm Stamper, who was chief during several years of the early Seattle Hemp Fest, come to our stage and speak to our crowd from the main stage for legalization of all drugs, right?
Yeah.
As a member of LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, Jack Cole's organization, and it's interesting because we are so divided right now, and we are so polarized. I'm seeing people on my Facebook saying there's no such thing as a good cop and all cops are criminals and stuff, and I'm like, excuse me, but I work with cops at HempFest for 25, 27 years of our 29. We've been working directly with the cops during the event, during the permitting session. And I would never excuse we know what cops have done, the crimes against justice that police and law enforcement have done in the drug war and in communities of color. But there are good cops out there that risk their lives and die helping people. And I know some personally. And so, you get real pushback right now because people are so emotional. And we've watched these videos of people being executed in the streets by cops. But I just want to caution us all to remember that every human being is an individual, and the drug war was about labeling everybody that used drugs as a criminal. And we don't want to do the same, make the same mistakes in response, in reverse, because we need cops to change. We need them to change. And the way to do that is by reaching out and somehow working with the good ones and getting them to speak out against the bad ones. Go ahead.
I want to say that, if you don't mind, that the LEAP is now called Law Enforcement Action Partnership. That's what it stands for, instead of Against Prohibition. And they've changed their website address. It used to be leap.us, but now
I didn't know that, actually. That's good to know.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have what you're saying exactly, Vivian. They say the drug war is part of it, but the systemic racism and so forth goes way beyond that. I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
I'll get Neil Franklin on next week. Maybe I'll call him because he was on our panel at Drug Policy, a few years ago in Atlanta. So I'll get Neil, and he'll give us a real scoop of how they're doing and where they are. Because you're right, they should. We should have Oprah. We should have the Dalai Lama. We should have all people against hatred, against separation right now. The musicians should be up right now. And we should get Neil Franklin from formerly from LEAP to now what they're calling themselves, and we should mobilize them through what we're doing right now. I mean, you just reminded Vivian of their new site and this and that. That's what it takes for us to get together to keep the conversation alive. And that's what I say at the end of my movie. And my movie's now, a few years old. And at the end of my movie, it says, keep the conversation alive.
Yeah. And that keeping alive is not as easy as it used to be. Even keeping ourselves alive, it seems like,
Well, everything is more extreme right now, but with people like yourselves that have been in the trenches, especially, knowing Amy Pova was not available today, but knowing that there she is right there, that she was in jail for, I think, 6 or 9 years, and she's out she's incredible. She's working with the Kardashians and doing what she can with compassionate release. And so she says, I'm not Obama, but Trump is doing a good job with that action. But the bottom line is for us to hold our center and to be the Jack Harrers of our time.
And speaking of Jack Harrer, you said you might get Bruce Margolin on today?
Bruce was supposed to come on. He said yes for yesterday and yes for today. So he's probably, in Bruce's shaking ability, I just don't know if he can get on the StreamYard. You had a minute, getting on StreamYard. So
yeah,
we'll get him on next week.
And I didn't like coming in through Facebook personally, but I did it anyway. The reason I was saying that, though, is since you mentioned Jack Harrer, is that this is the 30th anniversary. This year is the 30th anniversary of the writing of the California Hemp Initiative, which Jack and I did, and Bruce Margolin provided the legal assistance to make sure that the language was lawful in that when we went forward. So he was instrumental in making that happen. And Vivian knows what this whole thing has been like with the initiatives. We ran that Jack's and my hemp initiative for 4 years until 90, 91. I was out of the country in 92, 93. Then 94, we did it again. Then in 95, we were doing it. And then we decided to shift over to medical marijuana because the Compassionate Use Act was getting on the ballot here. And so then we had this big split in the movement that Jack orchestrated, frankly. We tried to get him to sign on with the medical marijuana initiative. We said, look, Jack, if you just work with the medical people and us, we're the other hempsters who have been petitioning, but we had trained thousands of petitioners. Jeff, you were there. We trained thousands of people how to get good initiatives. And then we have Dennis is like, well, I don't want to have hemp people, blah, blah, blah. And so he got his patients to do it, and they were like forging signatures.
Was that Dennis Perone?
What?
Was that Dennis Perone?
Yeah, they had forged signatures. And then when we got back involved, it was the hemp people who got the volunteer signatures to put it on the ballot, not the patients, whatever people say. And it was a professional campaign. But what my point was basically was that Jack and Dennis decided to fight with each other instead of working as unity. And then that meant that after Prop 215 passed, we didn't have the support of the patients to come in and back the hemp initiative. And it wasn't until 2010 that we get finally Proposition 19 back on the ballot. And even then Jack was opposing that Dennis was opposing SB 420 and Prop 19. And the reason I'm saying looking at business is because he went with Prop 205, 205, right?
502.
502.
502.
Yeah. So you went through a similar thing where when we get things on the ballot, instead of people unifying behind it, oftentimes they wind up splintering over details when it's really important. And like I said, now we have people online saying, oh, things were not done properly, even though it had to be done properly. It couldn't have been on the ballot. You know what I mean? So,
Chris, do you remember, do you realize or recall that Jack handed me $301 bills out of the shower with his big belly, and then he came and he rolled on his tray with stems and seeds, a little J, and I flew that day with the Hemp Initiative to Sacramento, and I walked it in.
That was 94. I wasn't there, but I've heard you tell the story.
I walked it into the state capitol, and this lady came to me and she said, look at that button. I want that button. And it was Hemp Will Save the Planet, right? That original plan. And I took it off, and she was putting it on as she was going in with the paperwork, as she was going into the elevator. And I had my khakis on, and I was the only sober one. I'm a late bloomer in smoking. And it was such a heart opening experience. I flew up there, walked the initiative into the state capitol because everybody else was bickering and too stoned.
Another thing on the cops that are not so bad, you're saying, and this wasn't a cop, but you said the woman at the registrar's office or the Department of State, wherever you turned it in, Secretary of State, that they were kind of friendly to the issue. I have a similar story actually involving a hemp fest where after Hemp Fest, we went up to Canada in the late 90s with Mark Emery and spent some time with him. So coming back on the train, the last thing we did was, of course, smoke a fat joint. And we kind of smelled like we just smoked a fat joint. So next thing we walked straight into customs. And, of course, they spent all this time ripping up our stuff, trying to find something in there looking. And, of course, they're finding hemp this, medical marijuana that, books about everything and so forth. And so at one point, the cop looked at me and said, he says, I get why marijuana is illegal because the government doesn't want people smoking and so forth. He says, but I don't get why industrial hemp and medical marijuana are illegal. Can you explain that to me? And this is the customs agent asking me this question. But I mean, he said, I never understood why would hemp be illegal? I was surprised he even knew what hemp was at that point. But
we have to finish Jack Herer's work. We have to follow that book. And I had Dan on the show 2 weeks ago, and Dan was telling me that they just came out with the virtual book, and he republished it this year, Dad's book, and so we just have to use that as our Bible.
Well, it's a little bittersweet to me because I put a lot of work into that, and then Jack basically took me out of the book, and because he was mad about writing my own books and supporting other things than just his initiative. So to me, it's a great book, but it's also bittersweet to have spent 6 months, at one block making that book into what it is, and then having everybody tell me about what a great book Jack did. When in fact, at one point he called it our book. I was supposed to be on the cover. I was on the cover at one point. Part of the name of the book was my name of a book I had.
We're going to set the record straight, and with my new weed peace sign here, don't do it backwards, do it forwards. So we're going to set the record straight. Everybody, hemp hooray for Chris Conrad, assisting Jack and making the Emperors Wear No Clothes a reality. Thank you so much.
I kind of feel like the George Harrison of the Beatles. You have Dennis and Jack and the John and Paul that everybody talks about, but meanwhile, George Harrison was writing some really great songs.
Well, we see you, man. I'll do a legacy show with you, and we'll talk about that. And
but I mean, you gotta say, like guys like Vivian, they were right at the beginning. People who really got it.
30 years, 29 years for HempFest. Fantastic.
It's ironic to me, though, and Vivian's told me to tell this story before, is that you don't even seem to know the guy named Michael Miller anymore, but he was my Bach representative in Seattle. And so in 91, it was that we went up there and we met with him. Mickey and I were doing a tour around the country, and he took us to the park where the Hemp Fest was going to be. He said, we're going to have a big hemp rally here next month. I wish you could stick around. But it's like, we were going to be the other side of the country by then. And so I was there before the first Hemp Fest, but I didn't get to go to the first Hemp Fest. Right.
There are these things all the time on I see in magazines or on the internet of the 100 most influential people in the cannabis movement thing, right? And or the the cannabis awards for the most, the people that changed the legalized plant and stuff. And sometimes I'm actually slipping. You're on a lot of them. Sometimes I slip into some of them. And it's always really, I'm conflicted because it's like, well, wait a minute, man. There's people that gave their lives. There's people that worked when they were dying of diseases and stuff that nobody even knows about because they were putting the shoe leather down in their communities, right? I mean, there's been so many people, and there have been these kind of pot star folks. I mean, I won't mention his name, but we had this one activist show up at Hemp Fest in a lime green limousine and get out, and he had a cape and a staff, and it's like, I've arrived, I'm a pot star, and he's just like, really, man, there are people that their thing has been promoting their brand, and I've just never been very good at that. I've been trying to promote HempFest brand. But the thing to remember is that, there are nameless faces out there. So many people that have given so much, thousands and thousands of people, community activists and others that have all given so much. And
Vivian, I was thinking I would write a little book called How I Legalized Marijuana, and they would say, I got millions of other people to do the work.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Or I stood on the shoulders of all these giants, right?
Well, the Partridge Family from doing so much Zoom, Vivian, that would be a really great cover for
the Partridge Family.
Where all the squares are, where
family.
The Partridge Family, and so, but for HempFest, for you to honor all the people behind the scenes with one big photograph of that, a poster, and then it says HempFest and a little logo down there, but so they can have their day, their 15 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
This is how we became the Brady Buds.
Another thing though is we've got all these. I think one of the things that the cannabis reform movement got right before almost any other movement is we have so many activist women. I know this panel were all guys and so forth, but I tell you, without Mickey, without Ellen Comp, Karen Byers, Theodora Carey, I mean, the list.
Joy Beckerman.
What's your last name again?
Joy Beckerman.
Yeah, Joy.
Yes.
And Vivian, I heard she came back to Seattle. She's in Seattle now.
She just moved back to Seattle, which is that's we got lucky because Joy's amazing. I met Joy in '95.
Yeah.
I met her at the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam in '95. That's when I first met Joy.
Yeah, I say she's so appropriately named because many times I've been depressed about things, and I talk to her, and she just brings joy back into me. It's like, okay, I can get back out there and fight again,
Well, along with the women in weed, we're going to start to have a regular Weed Wednesdays little spot from Bitsy Bates. And she's going to do an infused cannabis little moment and show us how to make a infused pesto and this and that, and then we're going to have a little bit of a law and a little bit of a medical. So I'm going to turn my show into a little bit of a Pee Wee Herman show where I can be the Pee Wee Herman of weed, and we can have enjoyment but pass on information here. So. And after dinner or something like that, people could watch my show and really we need it. We need Rowan and Martin's laugh, and everyone's so freaking serious right now.
Well, yeah, I can kind of understand why.
There's so much to laugh about, man.
Yeah, I think I watched one of the things is that I was kind of remembering that after the 2016 election, we had legalized cannabis in California, and Trump had been elected, or I should say was elected president because the majority of voters voted against him, but nonetheless, he took power. And, for the first week, I could barely sleep thinking about what that guy could do to this country. And then I kind of convinced myself, look, I've always thought they were going to be worse than they were. Turned out they're not as bad as I thought. We have fires their cities are on fire, the stock market tanking. We've lost our prestige around the world. I don't know. He's kind of
people dead.
Yeah, and then he gets off the hook for things like, we just had a terrorist attack here in the U.S. that killed 3 people. I said we didn't just have it; it happened a year ago, but or 4 people. So as many people died under this one attack on American soil as died in Benghazi. And you look at how many hours the Senate spent looking at Benghazi, and they have never spent 5 minutes looking at what happened in that other case, where that's just on American soil.
Well,
Yeah,
I've always told children, pick your battles, you know, and find your core values. That's what you like, and then focus on that this lifetime. Make your life worth something. And I really am proud of both of you. I look at my father as an example. He thought his legacy was not solid, so he filmed himself for hours upon hours before he died to tell his Bucky Fuller story about less is more through architecture. He hated the sprawl, the architectural sprawl of cities moving outside of the city. And Bucky wanted to go vertical and all these things. But I'm proud of you guys for sticking with your word.
I wanted to say one more thing you said about going vertical, because this past winter I went to a hemp conference in Chicago. And so we took the tour of the city, and they say that one of the things about Chicago was that in the 1920s, I think it was, that they came up with a new kind of concrete that weighed 1/3 the weight of regular concrete. And that's how could they build vertical like that, because they reduced the weight. And I'm thinking hempcrete weighs 1/7 as much as this concrete that they're using, which weighs 1/3 of what the concrete they were using before. So it's 1/21st. But yet we haven't explored the potential of what does that mean? You know, three times lighter made it like so we can build up to the sky. 7 times lighter than that. What does that mean we can do?
Well, hempcrete is the answer. I mean, hemp toilet paper. I mean, just think about the stock market when the hemp toilet paper gets loose, you know, no more trees.
Nice pot leaf if you don't have any other thing. It's not the best way to wipe your butt, but you know.
Chris, you know, I have a podcast I do, a weekly podcast called Hemp Present on Cannabis Radio. I introduced a guy. I interviewed a guy, an Australian building expert, Greg Flaval, and he's been building homes out of hemp designed for elderly people, senior citizens to live in till they die. In other words, the idea is, I forget the term, the idea is that you don't need to go to a rest home. The home has been designed for you to age in your own home. And one of the things he told me I never heard is that he said that when they put elderly folks in hempcrete homes, they tend to live 5, sometimes 8% longer, because it gases off alkaline air.
The air. That's what my father
said. Air, right?
Yeah.
And we all know that acidic system creates disease. No, there's so many aspects of this, which is why I'm excited about this Green Renaissance theme for our virtual hemp fest. The Green Renaissance is a term that was created by Julie Carello from Skunk Magazine as a response to the green rush, which she doesn't like, the greed rush. We all saw what happened with the gold rush, right? All this negative stuff. And she says, we don't need a green rush. We need a green renaissance all over the planet to look at hemp as how it can revitalize and regenerate our society and create a sustainable, regenerative model in so many different ways, you know, across it. You know, as we all know, it cuts across all aspects of life with, you know, cannabis, health and beauty aids, and nutrition and agriculture and construction and medicine and spirituality. I mean, if there's a category, there's a role that hemp cannabis can somehow eke in there and play a role in. But as far as the you know, laughing and finding something positive in these terrible times, I think that what we're all faced with, and the challenge that I certainly struggle with, is, you know, there's always been terrible stuff going on. I mean, you know, in the concentration camps, there were beautiful skies and there were flowers growing out of the ground somehow, and people had to find humor and even joke in the most worst possible environment just to try to salvage some of their humanity. And I think what we need to do is realize that as crazy and as bad and depressing and demoralizing and as isolated as we are, our bliss, we can't give up all of our bliss. We can't let, you know, Donald Trump, I mean, every day I'm just like, how is this possible that one man could do this to our nation, right? How is this? And it's not just one man, but he's really an incredibly caustic catalyst. We can't sacrifice our bliss. We have to find some pockets of joy and
for cannabis. I mean, that's my thing. You know, I say I don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't chilling out with a little cannabis at night, because sometimes I get so upset about what's going on that I feel like, you know, I could do something stupid. But thanks to cannabis, I stay smart.
I bought my son a TV for Christmas, right? A nice, and he had to confide to me the other day that he saw Trump on TV and he broke the TV I bought him. He threw something at it. he threw something at it and broke it. And I said, son,
I
I don't know what join me, but I've almost thrown a brick at my TV too.
Jeffrey Fresh approves this message. When I lived in Eugene back in the 70s, my buddies would get twisted in their audio shop, and we would sell incredible high-end audio. And I saw him shotgun the TV. he couldn't have it anymore. Anyway,
That's hilarious.
So we're here.
Kill your TV, kill your television.
Yeah, but anyway, to end up on an optimistic note about it all, I really feel like cannabis is so important to getting us back out of this hole we've dug ourselves in. I think a hemp economy could solve a lot of the economic problems that clean, as you mentioned, that just using hemp instead of toxic poisonous fossil fuels and stuff is going to be something that will help us to improve the quality of our health and our lives, and that it can give us people a sense of community. That's why we've been doing the Cantheism, where we do cannabis spirituality circles, where we were sharing joints. Now we're doing virtual joints because of COVID, of course, or I call it Trump flu. But in any case, that just having people have that contact and be with each other, even virtually, through cannabis helps to solve some of these problems. And so I really feel like cannabis is a big part of the solution. And in your worst possible scenario, when everything falls apart, people are still going to need cannabis to rebuild the world and rebuild society afterwards. So I think
it's going to help with soil. By planting hemp, it puts minerals back in the soil. It's a perfect plant. It's one of God's plants that gives us so many things: paper, fiber, fuel, plastic, medicine, food. I mean, on and on and on what it does. And so how dare they have any prisoners in jail? How dare they, still arrest us? And Lance Glore is still in jail, and he did everything legal and all these things. We just have to work on, like, not just one thing at a time. We have to really push this louder and get louder so we can drown out the dark. Any final words, Vivian?
Well, yeah. First of all, we've heard that term that cannabis, or that cannabis is the gateway to drugs, right? And in reality, cannabis is the gateway to economic recovery and revitalization for our economy in all these various ways, and people shake their heads saying, oh, it can't just, that you can't sell that much pot. It's like, as we all know, it's much more about just smokable cannabis, man. It's all these applications. So, I appreciate being included in this important discussion. Chris, I'd like to contact you privately and talk about some stuff that we have going on. Jeff, same to you, my friend. Like to have you both on my show at some point. I've done over 200 interviews on Cannabis Radio now. Let's hemp is on the way.
Hemp parade. Hemp is on the way.
It's up to us, everybody, to do it. If you guys hold up 3 for weed, I'll do a screen capture. There we go. 1, 2, 3.
You seen it?
Yeah, I see. Up higher, Chris. There you go, right there. Okay, I got it. So I'm really proud.
I used to wish me to turn my hands even.
I'm proud of us, everybody.
Yeah. Can I just say my last thing is that since I formed Bach in '88, my goal was to make sure the world learns about hemp. The last hemp companies were getting closed. The last hemp fields were being shut down. The word hemp was unknown at that point, and so I think that through the work of people like myself and Jack and you, Jeff, and all the educators, I really have to give a shout out to HempFest. You guys have educated more people than anybody else. I don't think that knowledge is going to be lost again, but the world was on the cusp of completely losing its connection to the most important plant in the history of the world, for humanity. And so we have saved it. Whatever, it's up to the next generations to decide where we go.
Mickey's always at 420.
I have a clock set at 4:20. It always throws me off. I walk by it's 20 after.
Wait. Do either of you know the history of 420? I mean,
I heard that.
somebody told me it was a bunch of kids that went behind, right?
Yeah,
responsible pot use.
Yeah, so Deadheads, Grateful Deadheads, right?
Yeah, that was after school, but before their parents got home. So it was
the statue of Louis Pasteur.
And they're called the Waldos for people who want to look them up. Waldos in San Rafael, California.
Well, gentlemen. Now that we're having a great time here, and we need to keep this going and this conversation. This is going to go global with IBM TV. Thank you, Kimberly Calhoun, and everybody. And we're going to keep the conversation going and talk more about 420. I started the conversation today about Alex Rogers with ICBC. And he is having his conference next week, everybody. So please tune in, everybody, to his virtual conference. It's the ICBC June 9th, 2020. Location, anywhere that you are, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. They got early bird registrations right now. It's totally happening, and we're really excited. In fact, here, let me just, for 1 second, share my screen, and I'll share with you. I have my technician in the background. He's going to help us to show this here. And so right now, here's the ICBC site, you guys and gals, everybody. And you know who's on, Vivian, the ICBC? Look at that. Can you see that?
Rick Steves, I know Rick.
Yep, he's going to be on the ICBC broadcast here on June 9th. So everybody tune into June 9th at the ICBC. Enjoy that. There's Sally, John Sally, there's Tommy Chong, and it's going to be a beautiful time. Thank you all for really doing what you do, and I'll stop sharing now, and being part of the history and the solution. We are the medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't shake hands anymore, so I do the bow.
Yeah, there's the elbow. The bow reminds me of my dad taking me to Chinatown and getting those white pork bows. Remember, bow?
Uh-huh.
I'm drooling for one right now. Those Chinese bow. You know?
Thanks for having me on, Jeff, and thanks for everything you do, Viv. I really admire you both.
I love you guys both, man. You bet.
It's important. Thank you so much. Hemp Hemp Hooray. We're out of here. See you next week, everybody. Hemp Hemp Hooray.
Hemp Hemp Hooray.
Okay. Thank you, boys. Welcome to Weed Wednesdays, produced by International Broadcast Media, better known as IBM.TV. I'm your host, Jeff Eichen, human rights advocate and social activist fighting for government deregulation of weed and the release of all nonviolent criminals incarcerated for possession of marijuana, moving violations, parking tickets, IRS debt, etc. Here on Weeds Day, we keep the public informed about all things weed related, including festivals and legislation surrounding regulating the growth of hemp. Today, my guests are